Related to that, I've also noticed that the time duration between a PlayStation, let's say 3 to the PlayStation 4, or I don't know, Xbox
Yeah,
version X to X plus one, that also
yeah,
takes long. That also
yeah,
takes a long time. So
yeah.
even that
It's
is mostly due
extending
to
cycles. Yeah, each PlayStation newer version of PlayStation will take longer and longer to get to market.
that is because, I mean, is it they're figuring out the technology? Is that because, like, what I'm trying to understand is, like, iPhones generally, they have one every year, and sometimes
Yeah,
one in 6 months as well, if they have
yeah,
to release that X SE, or something like that. uh,
yeah,
so, like, are these technologies inherently much more difficult to, like, nail, or is there something else
yeah.
I'm missing here because it's taking
I think
longer?
that's a fair question to ask, right? So I think arguably there is a technology component here where you have to make meaningful enough leaps on the graphic performance from a PlayStation 4 to PlayStation 5 to make it meaningful enough, right? So for example, unless you're able to make a 5x better gameplay experience on PlayStation 5, why would I want to spend money on a new PlayStation, right? And I think the comparison to mobile is probably not very fair because the total addressable market of people who would buy a console is probably limited, right? It's not the case where a billion people will go and buy a mobile phone. So it makes sense for me to keep releasing a new iPhone every year because I would still be able to find enough number of people who will buy that iPhone year after year basis on a refresh. But the console gamers are not necessarily like that, right? Because the way that it works is I buy a console. Let's say I buy PlayStation 4. I bought it. I spend whatever $300 $400 to buy that console, and after that I build a game library. Right, I keep buying these discs. I bought, for example, Red Dead Redemption. I bought GTA. I bought five variations of FIFA. So this content itself is tied against the platform that you're buying into, or at least that used to be the case in the past, right? So there is a high degree of friction for a console user to move on to a new console unless there is an extremely compelling reason for them to move that, and that compelling reasons have to be on both front. It needs to be a order of magnitude hardware quality and performance jump. There also should be enough amount of games on the newer platform that can be played, right? So it's also, you should also appreciate the complexity of making a game compatible for a newer hardware form factor. So every time a newer console comes out, the developers have to figure out a way to make that game work on that, or utilize most of that hardware capacity, right? So an older version
I'm so
of a
sorry.
game. Yeah.
So just on that, I think players like Rockstar, I think they'll already be in touch with, let's say, Sony or Microsoft,
Yes.
to get their, I mean,
Correct.
to understand what the next upgrade is going to look like, right? Because
Correct.
with
Correct.
such long life cycles, if they keep building for the PlayStation 4, by the
Yeah.
time 5 is out, it'll be
Yes.
understood. Okay.
Correct. So that has to be the case, and these developers have to work closely, and that's in the best interest of the console developer to ensure that these flagship games or these massive games, which is what will drive a lot of the sales, right? So sales is not driven by just saying that hey, this fancy new PlayStation has come out. The sales will be driven by saying that hey, GTA 6 has come out and it's just phenomenal, and I want to play it, right? That is what really drives a lot of the sale. So the content is the tentpole around which the hardware and the console sales itself is driven. So you really have to nail the content bit right, and it is in the best interest of Microsoft and Sony to ensure that all developers and publishers get the best access to the software development kits and hardware development kits, so that their games can be made on the platform whenever they go live, right? So these sales cycles are really complicated, multi-party dances that Sony and Microsoft does once every 7 to 8 years, where they work closely with each publisher to ensure that the launch of the console plus the launch of these newer titles happen consecutively, so that the new consumer demand will sort of like start spiking up, right? And again, the challenge is the core hardcore gaming audience who will buy a console or buy a hardware device just to play games is limited. It's not the entire amount of audience who will just buy a mobile phone. So you would probably be selling to a same person who would have bought a console in the past, right? So it's an upsell rather than by acquiring an entirely new customer, right? So these are the complexities behind which the life cycles itself sort of like lengthen, right? If these are the considerations, then it sort of makes complete sense that these development cycles or the life cycle of these consoles are extended as much as possible, right? So for example, if my PlayStation doesn't last for 8 years, it makes no sense for me to invest in creating a content library there. If every new alternate year they're going to release a new console and newer games will have to be made on that, the total entertainment time that I as a consumer extracts from the console will be lesser, right? So that's the challenge there.
Like, one tangent here is, but I feel, again, I'm not too sure about this. I don't exactly know how frequently Nvidia releases their new graphics card.
Yeah.
But if they don't release it, if I was to assume that they release it once every year or once in 2 years, maybe they're losing out on the new, or they're losing out on the advances made in graphics, which would
Yeah.
help. Is that fair to say?
I think that's a argument that's quite often made because the transistors themselves, the GPU units itself become better over a period of time with Moore's law. The number of transistors being sort of like compressed into the compute device, and essentially every year they are able to deliver a significant enough performance gains over the previous generations of their core GPU device, right? So as long as Nvidia is able to deliver that, they should be selling that device again and again because it's not just the console market that we're talking about, right? The GPUs currently are used in multiple industries. GPUs are not just used in games anymore. So they obviously the first market is the PC games market, right? That's where a lot of these GPUs are sold. But apart from that, there is a massive enterprise market that is opened up right now, right? People are using GPUs for everything from terrain mapping to doing complex computation, and now they are increasingly being used for deep learning purposes like AI, running GANs or other sort of machine learning models. Right, these GPUs are better architected to do those processes than traditional CPUs. So there is a significant amount, and even blockchain-based businesses were using GPUs to mine Bitcoin, etc. And that's also sort of like drew the demand of GPUs for the last 3 4 years, right? So a lot of these higher order complexity compute that is happening in the current world is really being driven by GPUs. And to think that a lot of that technology development was really inspired by getting people to play more games is just something that makes me quite happy that that industry sort of drew innovation across these other industries as well, right? So Nvidia, to summarize, is able to do that because they have captive demand for their computing devices from areas that are adjacent to gaming, and but not just limited to gaming.